Okay, thanks again. I want to wrap up today's session and I guess the serious learning portion before we go out. Many of you have been here before. By a raise of hands, who are visiting SmartOps Forum for the first time? Okay, welcome. So I'll give you a little bit of the background about SmartOps. How we got started, some of the intellectual heritage, what's the science behind it, and then speak a little bit about where we are investing further in innovation, and then recognize, we do this every year, recognize a couple of our customers who have been great partners of ours. So as some of you may have figured out by now, I am a professor at Carnegie Mellon. And much of you may think, how can this guy ever be useful, right? When you think about professors in your school, you say, okay, these are people who have self-selected to be useless in life, right? Right. You want to write some papers, do some teaching, have the summer off, right? Complain about the fact that you don't get enough raises, but then you live in the comfort of never getting fired, and so you kind of make your trade-offs. So I'm one of those, I guess, professors who accidentally started becoming useful. So I know that in early years when we were trying to sell SmartOps, to customers, there would be two levels of skepticism. One would be, okay, you're a new company. You don't seem to have too many references. I got to take some risk, on dealing with this new technology. I'm going back to 2001, 2002, when I founded the company. The bigger skepticism was, oh my God, this guy is a professor. Okay, he's not even a guy who has worked in the real world. So what is the likelihood that this, concoction, would work? But one thing I really, like about supply chain, and I like about, I think, how entrepreneurship and the culture of this country is, there's always somebody rooting for the underdog, right? There is always somebody looking for the next new thing. There are risk takers. There's always somebody saying there must be something better, right? And I think, I want to give credit to Kellogg's. I think Joe is here. I saw him. There you are, Joe, one of the early customers of SmartOps. And in fact, I've known Joe, I think, longer than my elder son. In fact, I think we did the proof of concept, and then we were negotiating the deal. I was off for the week because we were having a baby, and my wife said, you shall not leave the hospital room. So I said, okay. Okay, I'm not. And then I got Martin to send me an email saying, hey, Sridhar, Kellogg's has signed. I need you to countersign. I said, I think I can do that. I think I'm allowed to do that. So we actually signed the deal the same week my first son was born. So it's been a while. But I do appreciate the folks who step up and say, we'll give it a shot. And I think that's how we got started. In the year 2000 to 2003, in those years, we were basically doing three things. First, we were trying to explain what is this thing called enterprise inventory optimization. By the way, we in some sense created this space. This phrase EIO did not exist before 2000. So we had to educate not just the supply chain folks in companies, we had to educate AMR and Gartner and Aberdeen. Because in their world, there was the world of ERP, which was, Oracle and SAP. And there's a world of advanced planning and scheduling, APS, right, which was I2 and Manugistics and Logility and then APO. That was the world. And then we came in and said, well, we're a third world. They said, what third? There's only two. Right? And I said, no. I said, there's a third. They said, no, there is no third. And I said, no, there is something called a third. You don't know it yet. Okay? So part of what we had to do in 2000 and 2003 with customers like Kellogg's and others is actually create this space. And around 2003, I think AMR wrote a report. Oh, there is a new thing that is not ERP and that is not advanced planning and scheduling, that is called EIO. And so what is EIO, right? And we obviously try to phrase something that has three letters, right? All acronyms should be three-letter acronyms, so we had to introduce that. Our first product name was called Multi-Echelon Safety Stock, called MESS. I was told that may not sell very well. I'm not a marketing guy, okay? So a few years later, my team said, you're not even a sales guy. So, as I was looking at Jeffrey Moore, I said, I'm getting marginalized in my own company. I was the founder. I thought I was an important guy. And over time, people said, Sridhar, you should probably come to the forum, hang out at the yacht. Otherwise, just stay away, okay? Let the serious people, run the business, right? So, but, the heart of this is the following. So what is new about this? What is new about this is the fact that when you have a supply chain with multiple echelons, I mean, that's why I love the picture you put, Jason. You didn't spend much time on it, but it was at least 6 echelons deep, if not more. I think there's 8 echelons in there in the Kohler, the faucet supply chain, right? So each echelon is going to do some bill of material work and move forward until you get to the finished goods, right? So you think about a 6 or 7 echelon supply chain. Then you ask yourself, if I put inventory somewhere in the 3rd echelon, how does it affect the inventory in the 6th echelon? Right? Interestingly, none of the previous products ever did that trade-off. It's as simple as that. My one-sentence contribution of SmartOps to the world of supply chain is asking the basic question, what is the relationship with inventory at level 1 or level X with inventory in level Y? Because there is a connection. And you can't artificially decouple them by putting an internal service level, whether it be 95 everywhere or 98 everywhere, right? So the concept that you have a supply chain and inventories upstream and downstreams are not independent variables was really kind of what was out there. It's not that demand was not being propagated. Of course demand is getting propagated up the supply chain. It happens in advanced planning and scheduling. It happens in MRP. So it's not about demand propagation across a BOM. It is about understanding the relationship between the inventory target at an upper echelon with a lower echelon and vice versa. And so we said, how do we differentiate the concept of multi-echelon? And so we said, let's introduce another 3-letter acronym called ISL, Internal Service Level. So one of the things we had to do was to introduce some vocabulary that I think many of you are now appreciating exists. And ISL was there to say, oh, is ISL an input, like you're doing, or is ISL an output? So if somebody says, well, my DC supplies to my store, and the DC to store service level is set to 95%, I would say that is not multi-echelon optimization. If you set an internal service level, by definition, you're not optimizing it. So the key differentiator between what is multi-echelon and what is not multi-echelon is the internal service level an input from you, or is it an output of the algorithm? So the central contribution in the simplistic way is that we said the internal service level, which you are putting as a management number, should actually be computed and not set. Okay, so that was kind of the multi-echelon piece. What also made it, I think, somewhat different from what was out there is when you look at advanced planning and scheduling, I joke about it because I come from an academic perspective. I don't know what is advanced about APS. Right? Again, it's not a question of arrogance. I'm just saying, what is advanced about it? It is, first of all, deterministic. Even when you do managistics, networks or I2 factory planner, I mean, I'm not saying it's not capacitated, but it's deterministic. Okay? But what happens to all the uncertainty that's out there? You got supply reliability issue, you got plant schedule attainment issues, you got forecast variability, forecast errors, you got the bias, you got intermittent demand. What happened to all the stochastics? When I introduced the word stochastic, you should have seen, the analysts. They were like, hey, professor, I mean, this is DOA, dead on arrival. You can't use words like that, in the marketplace. I said, why not? It is stochastic. They said, shh. Just like you shouldn't call your product mess, please do not use the word stochastic. Use whatever word you want to use, but don't use stochastic. But I think stochastic should be part of the lexicon. If you are in finance, would you invest with a money manager who doesn't do stochastic? You would be bankrupt. I think it will be bankrupt regardless these days. But, right? But the fact that you could ignore uncertainty in your supply chain is shocking for so long. So the second piece I want to bring from academia, beyond the multi-echelon, was a comprehensive view of uncertainty into the game. Right? So many of you may have an operations research background. You can think of OR as three big pillars. There is combinatorial optimization, the linear programming, the integer programming. That is inside Managistics, I2, APO, and so on and so forth. It's deterministic. It could be linear. It could be nonlinear. But everything is known, and it's optimizing among a set of options. A second field you may have bumped into in your life is simulation. It's not optimization. It's not telling you what the right answer is. It is saying if you do X, Y will happen. And then you can change X and then say what is new Y. It is performance evaluation, really. And usually you do simulation of complex systems that happen to have uncertainty in it. So many people who do stochastic modeling know simulation because you generate random number variables and so on and so forth, but it doesn't optimize. It allows you to play around with different choices and says, oh, if I put this inventory, I'll get this service level, try this, And so it's a trial and error manual performance analysis part of operations research. There is actually a third part of OR, which I realize we usually don't teach to undergraduate students that much. We certainly were not teaching it to MBA students, and therefore we generated generations of people who did not know that this space existed, and that was stochastic processes. Stochastic processes involves capturing the various types of uncertainty and then modeling it and optimizing around it. So if you think about it, this is the world that finance guys got into in the 1970s. The Black-Scholes model that some of you might have seen is a classic example of a stochastic model in continuous time. He just took it from physics. So it's actually the Feynman-Kac formula of 1947. So these two graduate students at MIT were floating around. They have a PhD to do, and they don't have a thesis topic. And one of them says, you know what? If I forgot all the frictions of trading, and I assume that the stock price was a Brownian motion, and that I could trade infinitely often, and I assume the market had no arbitrage, I could write the value of a European option as a differential equation. And voila, it is the same thing that Feynman and Kac studied in 1947. Boom, they published the paper in 1973, Nobel Prize 1998. Revolutionized Wall Street is a rephrasing of the Feynman-Kac formula. Okay? Now, you say, oh, was Feynman a very bright guy? Yes, he was a bright guy. But he also was, floundering around quantum mechanics, trying to figure out, hey, why is this not working? And then he found, oh, there is a 1903 paper by a guy called Bachelier, some French mathematician. And he said, if I take that and put here, I can actually figure out something called quantum electrodynamics. And the next thing you know, that dude got a Nobel Prize in 1965. This is how science progresses. At some point, there is no logic. Okay? Then some guy like Galileo says, you know what, heavy objects and light objects take the same time to hit the ground from the Tower of Pisa. Right? People are like, no. He says, yeah, I'll stand, I'll do it. Right? Couple people don't like it, that send him off to prison, anyway, right? But the dude tried to apply logic, right? And he said, you know what, it hits the ground at the same time, barring some, air friction kind of a thing. Right? And then a guy like Newton shows up and says, you know what, I can actually read the math. It's not just about stones going down, it's actually the same math for planets. So he creates a mathematical basis. So you go from nothing to logic to a mathematical framework, but Newton is entirely deterministic. Okay? V is equal to U plus AT, all the Newton laws of motion, is linear, is deterministic. Right? And the world goes on for 200 years. And some guy called Michael Faraday shows up. He says, I don't understand this Newton character. Right? Because it doesn't explain electricity and magnetism. Right? The good news about Faraday was he was actually not an educated boy. He was a son of a bookbinder. So he used to bind books in his father's shop. And he would read the books that he was binding. That's the shocking part. Right? So he read these books, and then one day he went to hand the books at Cambridge, and he went into the room and he said, I don't know who this Newton character is. And there's a guy called Humphrey Davy, who was a famous professor giving the talk. At the end of the talk, he goes and asks Davy, why are you guys unable to explain this magnetism thing? They said, what do you mean? We are applying Newton's thing. I said, no, but it may not be linear. Maybe there are curves. They were shocked. But all he had to do was to put a magnet and iron fillings, and we all know how the curves come, right? So then Faraday said it's not straight lines, it has some curves in it. So it goes from linear deterministic to non-linear deterministic, right? It goes on for 150 years. And then quantum mechanics comes in 1925, and today you can't do physics without uncertainty. So one thing you'll notice, this is not just supply chain, it's just not finance, it's not economics, it's not physics. The way our society has moved forward is no logic, some logic, deterministic linear math, deterministic nonlinear math, stochastic. So in some sense, it is inevitable that somebody, if not me, would have brought multi-echelon stochastic to the table because it's the natural thing to bring. See, I did not invent multi-echelon inventory theory. In fact, the first paper was written in 1960. Clark and Scarf created the first multi-echelon model in management science. From 1960 to about 1990, there were these professors, guys like me, writing papers for each other. Hey, look how cool I am. Oh, I'm cooler than you. Right? Yeah. It's all about coolness, right? And nobody in practice even knew we existed, right? But I was an engineer, so I said, what if I took this cool thingy and made it computational? So my contribution was actually just to take something that was already there for 30 years and put an engineering spin on this. And said, instead of just talking to other professors, what if I created a method that would take inputs, have an algorithm, and come outputs? And then you can take these outputs that would choose inventories up and down the supply chain. So SmartOps really is putting those algorithms to compute the outputs in a multi-echelon setting from the inputs that we're getting from the ERP systems. So 2000 to 2003, early customers, I think by about 2003, EIO was a well-respected space. 03 to about 05, 06, I think other competitors came in. I2 said, oh, we also do multi-echelon. Then Manu came and said, oh, we also do multi-echelon. Suddenly it became fashionable for everybody to be multi-echelon and stochastic, right? It didn't matter whether they understood it or not, but they said, hey, we are multi-echelon and stochastic. So 2003 to 2006, I thought we saw the highest level of competition, both from some newcomers, like Optian, as well as some extant players like I2 and Manugistics. At that time, again, I was moving less and less mathematical to be more and more business guy. I said, how do I win this battle, right? And I noticed that 60% of the people have chosen SAP as an ERP system in the Global 2000. So I said, oh, there's something called SAP. I need to get them on board. So in 2006, we created a co-marketing agreement with SAP. It was called Endorsed Business Solution. And then in 2007 and 2008, I believe we were one of the best EBS partners for SAP. And then in 2009, they asked if we would be a solution extension, which meant that they would, be able to sell our software, and our technologies would be far more meshed. So many of you, have bought SmartOps actually as an SAP EIO solution, and that comes from the reseller agreement, of 2009. So I think EIO was created 2000. 2000 to 2003 was basic education of the market. 04, 05, 06, I think there's a lot of trashing around, of who's going to get the space. By now, I think people know what EIO is, generally speaking. People budget for it. It's part of the business process. And I think, SmartOps alone has, 55, kind of customers. So then you say, okay, what next? And I want to show you a couple things before, we close. So I think we went from an operations research algorithm company to a supply chain software planning company, where we want to make sure it's not just about the correctness of the math, it is about the fact that people will use the outputs. That is why even in the panel I wanted to spend time not on the math aspect of it, but really, so how did you get people to use it? What were the challenges in getting the data? right? How do you roll it out in practice? The organizational challenges, the data challenges, because that's where we are today. You can check the math, it'll work out, okay? Then you'll notice, oh, how do we get people to use it? One of the things we found, and I think this is also reflected in the discussions we heard today, is people want an ability to look at their supply chain, dashboards, reports, analytics, and so on and so forth. The second thing is mobility has kicked up, right? I mean, even Martin presented earlier this morning, people are used to mobile devices. Even laptops. I mean, most of us work on laptops, and then I think with iPads and others getting more and more capable, at least at the senior executive level, most people are not creating new content, they're reviewing content, right? They don't really need the full word processing. They can do the iPad type mobility. So what I asked people at SmartOps was to look at a variety of innovations. One of the innovations I want to show is we decided to look at analytics and dashboards and a collaborative way in which you could operate your supply chain, but using iPads. Okay? There's a little bit of background on the iPad. I have two boys. They love the iPad more than they love me. Okay? It's just true. It's the way it is. Okay? Whenever I go back home after a visit, I open the door. These guys rush. That I think they miss me. They go straight to my bag. Right? But here was the question that my son asked me. He says, Dad, Mom says you're a CEO of a software company. I said, yeah. He says, I've been looking at iPad. I don't see any of your apps. I mean, as far as he's concerned, you don't exist. I mean, and his universe is, I am on iPad. I mean, your iPad, but I'm on my iPad, right? I know Angry Birds, I know YouTube, I know a lot of stuff. I don't see SmartOps. I mean, how can you be a software company? So I said, what we're going to do? We're going to create mobile apps on iPad to do supply chain. Okay, so I want to show you a couple things. A little bit forward-looking, but I think you'll find it useful. This is certainly you can do on the desktop. So we're going to have this on the desktop, but I wanted to show you even on the iPad that is now ready for consumption. So the story is going to look something like this. There are two people. One is Susan Price, and she is going to be monitoring the supply chain. And when she finds that something's not going right, she's going to find Stephen Moore and tell him to check out what's going on. So this is Susan Price's iPad. Okay. So one of the apps we created is called MMA. Again, 3 letters. Metrics, Monitoring, and Analytics. Okay. So I'm going to tap on that. Yes, and we use SAP Business Intelligence. Okay. So she has a metrics watch list. Susan's looking at North American region. She's looking at the sales across the different regions. You can see all the fun stuff that you can do with iPad. More interestingly, she says, okay, let me look at my scorecard. Is it clear enough at the distance, or is the contrast okay? So it's the same output you're going to see on our Analytics Intelligence module on your desktop that we have made it render on the iPad. Okay? Some skill is required because of some restrictions that you can't use Flash and stuff like that. But so here are some metrics we put together. There's some volume shipped. You look at the dollar fill rate, on time, on full as some metrics. It tells you what the current attainment is, what the target, and it also gives you a trend of are you doing well, doing poorly. In this example, it looks like our European friends are doing great, but the North American supply chain is not doing very well. Right? So you look at the dollar fill rate, and you say, all right, let me put on dollar fill rate, and it goes into Google Maps. By the way, the ability to go to Google Maps from business objects is not yet available. It's going to come next month, but engineers at SmartOps also have good degrees from good schools, so they can figure this out. Okay, so this goes straight, it picks up from Google Maps, and you can do all the fun things you usually do with Google Maps, right? And then you go to the red button, and you say, oh, Stephen Moore, New York, you seem to be the problem. Yeah, unfortunately his name is Moore because, you would think that you would be a high inventory guy and not a, low inventory guy, but, right? Then you say, okay, let me see what I can do. You press that button, it gets an email, grabs the information into that email, and says, okay, Stephen, this is, I don't want to say Stephen, this is Susan, okay? Please take a look at this and get back to me. So I'm going to send it. And in principle, it should have gone. Okay, you heard it. All right, so did you hear it bing somewhere else? All right, so I'm now going to pick up Stephen's iPad. That email that just showed up is from Susan Price that says, please take a look at this. And the email's right there. You say, all right. He says, let me take a look at this. It goes back to the map. Obviously, it goes to his region. And it says, all right, let me look at my service level report. So that's what I pressed. Or did I press it? Or not yet. And he has his report. So he has several product families, cleaner and others. I don't know how well the contrast is being projected. This is not a high-def projector, I think. But, he has several products and several product families. And he notices that the cleaner has the bad service level. So you press on cleaner. And you look at cleaner 250, 450, 350. 4 of them have service levels. 1 seems to be on the edge. 1 seems to be okay. Looks like the mega store is getting a decent service level, but the regional grocer is not. So, you get the kind of the drift of the kind of information that could be present. You press on the cleaner 250, and it says, okay, what's the root cause here? Is it forecast standard deviation? Is it the forecast? Is it the batch size? Is it the lead time? Is it the lead time standard deviation? What has happened? Right? And so in this case, it shows that the driver appears to be a radical change in forecast standard deviation. So the ability to actually find out the root cause for why the answer could be, again, this is obviously staged to walk through the demo, but all the data is sitting inside the SmartOps data store. It is being rendered using business objects on Analytics Intelligence module. I'm just rendering it on iPad. Okay? So then you click on forecast standard deviation. It shows you all the different drivers. But let me move to the next one. And you can see that the forecast has changed maybe 10 in a small amount over time, but the forecast standard deviation since the last couple of months has been increasing. You can check that the other things like lead time and lead time standard deviations really haven't changed. The batch size hasn't changed. So really what has changed is lead time standard deviation. So I say, okay, if the lead time standard deviation has changed, shouldn't SmartOps have computed and improved safety stock and target inventory position, reacting to that? So you go and check on cleaner 250. And then you can see that the target inventory position and the safety stocks have been increased, reflecting the increased standard deviation. And the blue line is slowly showing how the on-hand inventory is catching up to say, when you increase targets, it's going to take some while for you to push that into the supply chain and the suppliers to kick in. So really what is happening is slowly the blue line is reaching the yellow line. When it actually reaches the yellow line, you'll get the service level that you're looking for. But until that happens, you're going to be short of service. So you can then say, all right, Susan, I'm going to send you an email. Okay, I'm going to be nice. Dear Susan, thanks for checking. I'm not a fast typer, as you can see. As you can see, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So you get the drift, and then you send it off. That, by the way, went to Susan's iPad. Then you say, you know what? I got to talk to this demand planning guys. Right? Look, it's a hierarchical structure. You get yelled at, you're going to yell at somebody. I mean, I know there's somebody at the bottom, who needs to yell at a supplier like SmartOps. But the point is, look, look, I know how the world works. Okay, I mean, it's right. And so you say, all right, I'm going to send this to my demand planning team. I think demand planning at smartops.com, and you say, hey, dude, I thought we put more money into logistics. Hey, what happened, right? So, So that's kind of the story here. So again, I just want to give you a view of what can be done with business analytics, with grabbing the data that is already in our data store, both from the driver side, but also from the output side with respect to the time-varying inventory targets, and put it in a collaborative framework where everything is embedded. As Martin said, most of us today, use emails in terms of communicating, and then, we can add Google Maps, whatever else you want, in there. Okay. So I want to spend maybe a minute on the underlying technology that drives it. Oops. What do I need to do? I think my guys put together a PDF document. Yep. How do you make it project on the screen? Aha. Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, by the way, the technology is this talks to Apple TV, Apple TV talks to a projector, projector goes out. So Apple guys are pretty cool, huh? So what's happening here, right? So we have an ERP system. Then you have supply chain optimization from SmartOps. They're sitting in their servers. So that's all the same, right? I mean, 1 and 2 is everything that you already have, right? This is going through whether you're in Kohler, Dow, and so on. So all we did now is to say, okay, how do we get it out of this kind of a hardware laptop, desktop world into the world of iPads? So really, people have been investing now in taking stuff that can be rendered on desktops and making it as easy as possible to be rendered on iPad. Okay, that's really what we have done here. So the same reports, if you can log in on your desktop laptops, you're going to get the same thing, but we had to format it to get it on iPad. So really, you can upload the key performance indicator watch list, into the iPads, and I just showed you a little bit of the collaborative issue resolution, between the two folks over there. And really, what we're trying to do is create the SmartOps Analytics Intelligence Module (AIM) that is consistent with SAP's investments in Sybase and in their mobile devices and BobJ. Okay, and we are using Apple's iOS, which is, I think Jeffrey Moore brought up. It's a great operating system, and we wanted to integrate it to Google, right? And so what I wanted, my engineers to do is to take supply chain management in terms of people working with the system and bring it to contemporary, state-of-the-art consumer technologies. Okay. So this is state-of-the-art. In fact, this has not been released yet, as I said, out there. And I think sometime in October we're going to see this. And this iOS is also, I think, consistent with the next release of iOS that is coming out. Okay. So then you say, okay, this is fine. What about doing what-if analysis and stuff? So I said, since my son laughed at me and said I don't have one app, I'm going to make 2 apps. Okay. Right? I'm a competitive guy, at times. Right? And so this also has a 3-letter acronym called SSA. Okay, so it's MMA for Metrics, Monitoring, and Analytics. SSA is Scenario and Strategy Analytics. Okay? Again, little business objects there. So Susan can say, all right, where is my inventory? Is it cycle stock, pipeline stock, pre-built stock, safety stock, and how is it changing with time? So you have seen the time-varying inventory chart. I'm just rendering it on iPad. Okay? Cool things in iPad is, if you don't want to see, I believe, all the things, you can move this around, and that automatically will, reduce the number of things you can see. You can see left, right. I mean, I think what iPad has done is it's made navigation remarkably, intuitive and likable, right? And then, of course, if you touch it, it'll tell you what the numbers are, and so on and so forth. Then you say, okay, that seems to be the various forms of inventory, right? Where is my safety stock? And you say, okay, let me see my safety stock distribution. So you have inventories in different DCs and different plants. So you can go to Texas plant, you can go to South Carolina plant, Illinois DC, you can circle around, and my kids like playing with this one, so I'm just gonna circle it around. You can see how the safety stock is distributed. So you can see the forms of inventory changing over time. You can see the distribution of safety stock that's out there. And then you say, okay, what is the service level to safety stock trade-off curve? Right? Something that you all want to do. So it's done in SmartOps. It's sitting in data store. Why don't we render it on iPad? So if you change the service levels from 80 to 90 to 99, you can see the safety stock investment. And then we said, what? Let's do the multi-echelon view of this. How is safety stock changing at the plant versus the DC? You can see that the DC inventories are climbing quite sharply. The plant inventory is climbing, but you almost don't see it. It's actually a small increase in plant inventory. So what you will do when you actually do multi-echelon inventory, you will notice that when you increase the customer-facing service level, obviously the safety stock will go up at that location. In fact, if you look more carefully, the ISL will also go up a little bit. Actually, if you look at it at optimality, which means that the upstream inventory of service, safety stock will also go up, but much less gradient than at the bottom. Okay, so you can see the multi-echelon, kind of effect in here. And finally, you say, okay, I want to do other scenario analysis. So you got a base scenario. The first one is batch size increases by 100%, and you saw before that if the batch sizes get large, they tend to cover for a certain period, which means that you can reduce your safety stock. So you see that aspect of it. If the forecast error decreases by 20%, then obviously you get less inventory. Lead time variability decreases, you get less inventory. Supply lead time increases, you get more inventory. So whatever what if analysis you guys are doing anyway, right? This gets rendered and put together for analysis. Again, we just put together a few examples to show that the technology to bring what is already available on desktops and laptops into really what I consider current state-of-the-art consumer electronics is there. Many of you met Gary, who is our Chief Technology Officer, and he has committed, I think in some vague way, that this will be available for general release in Q1 of 2012, assuming that SAP and Apple and others don't have bugs in their releases. Okay, so there's always caveats from the CTO. My engineers obviously said that they're going to give it to me tomorrow, but that's why they are not engineering managers. Okay, so let me maybe close the session here. Again, first, thank you all for coming. We've been doing this for 11 years, having customers like you and obviously prospects who we hope will be future customers, very important to us. We want to co-innovate with you. We worked with Kellogg's to build the service level optimizer SLO. We worked with Conagra to build PPPO, production planning. A lot of this analytics, actually, I do want to say, was done collaboratively with LSI. I know Divyesh, gave the talk earlier today. He did not, say it, but it was great to partner with LSI, on this. On that note, let me make the 2 awards for this year. The innovation partner for this year is LSI, so if Divyesh and others are around. You probably didn't expect this, but yeah, right? So good, as long as our guys kept their mouth shut. Thank you so much for partnering with us. And our customer partner of the year is Dow AgroSciences. So Dave and others. By the way, Roman Haas won this in 2008. They did? Yeah. So so finally got them up. Yeah. So in fact, Jim Melly was at Roman Haas at that time, right? So good. Thanks again for being a great customer partner for us. Yeah. Again, thank you all for coming. I hope it was educational. You saw, what SmartOps can do, and we have tried to be very open and honest about, what the product does and what it takes to bring it to life. And I hope you appreciate, that openness and honesty. Obviously, I look forward to, spending time with you this afternoon and over many years to come. Okay, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sridhar Tayur.